Massard Road is a north-south arterial towards the eastern end of Fort Smith. In total, it's just under 6 miles from top to bottom, and for about 2.5 of those miles, it has one of the city's few dedicated bikeways. But the entire road is still cyclable the whole way, which is a lot better than some of the other places in town. And this video is my attempt to share my experience of using this roadway as a cyclist almost every day. It's not an attempt to trash on the roadway. I want this to be more of a learning experience so we can take some of the good things, some of the bad things, and learn from them as we work on other improvements elsewhere in Fort Smith. On this route today, we'll be riding from the intersection of Massard and Phoenix, the start of the bikeway, all the way down to I-49, pointing out the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, so right off the bat, that little yellow rectangle, that's tactile pavement. It's got little bumps on it, so if you have a visual disability and you're walking on the sidewalk, it's a signifier that there's an intersection coming up. And then once you are finished crossing the road, there will be another one that you can also feel with your feet that lets you know that you've finished crossing the road. Now, the yellow color is also really good even if you don't have a visual disability, because sometimes, especially on like a cloudy or gray day, the sidewalk and the street are going to look very, very similar. And if you're on a bicycle, you can't necessarily tell where is the safe place for me to get back onto the sidewalk once I'm finished crossing the curb. Because there might be a curb that's 8 or 9 inches high that your bicycle can't go over. So you know to always look for that yellow box when you're crossing the road. The other thing I notice about this is that the sidewalk is right up against the road. It's in what's called the clear zone, which is an area where the city won't build any structures because they know that they will get eventually damaged by cars. But for whatever reason, engineers and planners are okay with putting pedestrian infrastructure in the place where we don't build anything valuable. It's also extremely, extremely dangerous for anybody who's not in a car. This turn in the sidewalk up here, I'm going to classify as a meandering sidewalk. Meandering sidewalks are an annoyance because they cause you to have to turn slightly when you otherwise wouldn't have had to turn, but they can also be dangerous as well. So in this case, if you can imagine, I'm about to take this turn up here, but what that's doing is it's putting the source of danger, which is Massard Road, to my back. I'm going to be crossing this road up here, but now danger is coming from in front of me, behind me to the left, behind me to the right, and directly behind me. So I have to have basically 360-degree view of traffic, whereas a straight sidewalk, I would just have to look to the left and to the right. I've done a bad job of explaining it, but meandering sidewalk is the technical term. You can search for that in Google or Bing. These black and white magic wands in the middle of the bikeway, they're called bollards. They're essentially there to prevent motorized vehicles from entering into the bikeway. So if you can imagine, a bicycle can fit through there, but a Chevy pickup could not. They are very handy for keeping bikes separate from car traffic, but sometimes they can be placed in poor manners. Also in GeoGuessr, we study bollards from all around the world. In Arkansas, cyclists are considered pedestrians as long as they are on the sidewalk or on the bikeway. So in the case of a crosswalk like this, the cyclist has the right of way. As you can see, the stop line for cars exiting this parking lot is behind the crosswalk. That is really smart design, so drivers have a not very subtle clue that you need to stop before the crosswalk, let the bicycles go by, and then you can cross the crosswalk. There are other intersections in this video where I will cross through a crosswalk and there's no stop line at all, so drivers are compelled almost to go through the crosswalk while they wait for a right or a left turn. The other thing to note at this particular intersection is that there is a bush on the other side of the crosswalk. So one thing that we need to think about as we design green space is that visibility for drivers includes visibility of bikes. And I can see a scenario where that bush on the other side grows up to be so large that even if a driver stops safely behind that stop line, they can't see the traffic on the cycle lane in front of them because that bush is in the way. So getting rid of visual impairments like that is called daylighting. It's been used to great success to make traffic a lot safer, especially in places like New Jersey. In terms of cost, a bike lane like this is usually just asphalt poured over the ground. It's about $300,000 per mile to do something like this, and because there's very little weight of traffic on it, the maintenance cost is exceedingly low. It's almost incalculable. On the other hand, a road would be about upwards of $2 million per lane per mile. So this 5-lane road that we're riding next to right here, if you compare, can be about 15 times more expensive than the bike lane over here for every foot. So if we spend $1 on a bike lane, the same amount of road costs $15. Here's a good intersection to review what we've already discussed. As you can see, we're still in the clear zone. There's a fire hydrant maybe 20 to 30 feet away from Massard Road. Obviously, they've placed it that far back because they want to keep it safe from cars. But what's more important? Is it a human life on a bikeway, or is it the fire hydrant? So in my mind, the bikeway should have been where the fire hydrant is now, and the fire hydrant should be where the bikeway is. You'll also notice that there's no stop line before the crosswalk at this intersection. And another thing that you might notice are these bollards protecting the bikeway from cars traveling on it, because it can be confusing, especially if it's dark or if it's raining. Cars will see pavement and they'll think that's for them, but this one is not. This one is for me. The other thing here is that this particular road, Louisville Road, leads to the airport. It says road closed up there. There is a gate further up that leads to the airport, and you cannot get through that gate as a car, a cyclist, or a walker. But what's interesting is the other side of the road is not gated, so if you're a cyclist coming from the other direction, you can go into this supposedly restricted area just fine. It's not gated off, and I don't know why they've chosen to do it that way. I think it's just because they figured everybody is going to be in a car, and therefore we don't need to gate the other side. It's literally just a small curb that you have to hop, and then you can be in this restricted area. Anyway, so this is an example of an area that has been flooded out, and there was debris in the roadway, and it's now been cleared. If you've ever heard of a motorcyclist complaining about grass clippings on the roadway, it's no different for a cyclist. We also have to deal with things like gravel from construction, sand, grass clippings, and then just general mud from any time it rains. So the city spends a lot of time and energy to clear the roadway for cars, but cycles are usually a lower priority. And I'm not saying that they should be a higher priority than cars, but it is an example of how there is a tendency to believe that cars are inherently the superior form of transportation, but a big part of that reason is because your comfort and safety in a car is very, very highly subsidized by the government. And it's not inherently better because the government is spending money to make you think that it's better. There have been some studies on that, and I don't have the exact numbers, but it's something like for every dollar that you spend driving, the government has to spend some order of magnitude higher than your dollar. I can't remember the exact number. Oh look, the fire hydrant is finally on the other side of the bikeway. This bridge is an example of a piece of infrastructure that was designed to keep cyclists at a high priority. And I say that because of this concrete bib to the left of the cycleway. If you look at it, it's separating the cycle lane from the roadway, which that's obvious. But if you think about it, that concrete bib is really there to protect the cars from going into the waterway. And when they were designing this, they could have put it on the outside of the bikeway, but instead they put it between the bikeway and the roadway so that not only does it protect cars from going to the water, but it protects cyclists from cars. With that being said, I don't like this bollard here at all. It reminds me of a way that people think of cycling as a recreational hobby, which it is. There's definitely people into cycling for recreation, so BMX bikes, mountain bikes, road bikes, those are all used for recreation. But there is another type of cyclist, primarily cargo cyclists, who use this same infrastructure to haul cargo, whether that be groceries or mulch, to and from businesses and their house. And this bollard is ill-placed because it is so tight that I'm not sure that you could get a bicycle trailer through this small of an opening right here. And also, I don't know what it's protecting from, because with the concrete bib there's no danger of any motorized vehicles from entering this bikeway. Earlier I mentioned the cost of initial construction for a bike lane versus a road, but where bike lanes really shine is the maintenance. If you think about the cost of any particular good or service in a city, it's actually usually dependent on the number of linear feet of road. So you might pay for your water bill based on how much water you consume, but from the city's perspective, that water is free. They're not actually selling you water, they are selling you the pipes that lead to your house. And the wider your roadways are, and the longer your roadways are, the more pipe there is, and so therefore your water bill gets higher. And that works with any sort of city service. So fire department has to drive longer, the police department has to drive longer, you have to have more schools per child, more electric lines. So everything is based off of linear feet of road, essentially. And when we talk about infrastructure cost, I'm not just talking about the cost of the road and repaving the road, I'm talking about the extra additional cost of making things wider than they have to be. So it should look pretty obvious that this particular driveway is a lot different than the other driveways that we've been crossing so far. So first of all, it's quite a bit wider. The safety of a particular crossing is usually dependent on the amount of time that walkers and cyclists have to spend in conflict zones. So not only is the amount of time spent crossing through conflict zones longer, there's also 3 separate conflict zones here because there's a lane in and then 2 lanes out. So the reason that they would design it like this is to lower the barrier for entry to get a car wash, because this is intended to be something that's quick and in and out as quickly as possible. But whenever you have a business designed to have quick in and out access like that, it also increases traffic volume. And so what you have here as a result is a very dangerous intersection. And as someone who rides this route almost daily, this is usually where most of my conflicts happen. Even though we're about to come up to a much more dangerous intersection, this one is where I have most of my problems. What's also egregious about this is if you look at the structure of the building itself, it's built to be as cheap as possible. This isn't a business that's here to be a long-standing development that's meant to last as part of our community. They've built this to last maybe 10 to 15 years, and then it's going to be torn down. They just want to make a quick buck off of you. But as a result, we have to pay for the infrastructure costs of this extra wide driveway for them forever. Or whoever ends up developing the lot will have to. So it's a forever problem caused by a business that only wants to be here for 15 years. And now for the worst intersection on this trip. Maybe the worst intersection in Fort Smith. There's no sidewalk here, there's just this gravel or this dirt, which some bicycles cannot ride on. Once you get to the intersection, there is a curb ramp facing the wrong direction. If you're heading southbound on Massard, there is no curb ramp, and so you have this steep curb drop off that if you are in a bicycle that uses clips or cages, you will have to bring your bike down off the curb, then clip in while you're in the road with traffic. So if roadway safety is based on how long you spend in the roadway, we shouldn't design a roadway where cyclists have to stop and mount their bicycle while they're in traffic with cars. Okay, so I'd actually like to go through this intersection a second time on a different day, because not only do I have different footage for the second half of this video, but also I think it's worth going through here twice to see just truly how awful this intersection is. Right off the bat, there's debris all over the bikeway, mostly in the right lane. There's a barricade that's been knocked over for several days. And then here we have the end of the bike lane. We have to drive on this desire path. There's these flags all over. There's debris on the ground. Now, in order to touch the button, I actually have to turn out of my way, go over some gravel, which, by the way, bikes cannot travel over very easily. Most people would have to dismount here. Press the button, and now you can see the tire tracks from other bicycles right here, that it's a desire path in the making here up to this curb. And the curb is damaged because this is not a safe place for people to be. That's cars taking the corner too sharply and hitting the curb. So I'm not safe right here. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, getting over this curb on a bicycle is very, very difficult. And if you're not on a mountain bike, you're probably gonna have to get on either walk your bike all the way across, which drivers hate because you're slowing down traffic, or you can mount your bike in the traffic with the cars. Now, so the light turns green at this intersection as soon as the left turn, the left turn arrows are complete. So technically, bikes are the very last priority at this intersection. Now look, I'm coming up to speed as quickly as I can across the street, but then I have to immediately jam on my brakes and do a sharp left turn in gravel, which bikes can't go through, by the way, and then a quick right turn. So if we're talking about whether bicycles are vehicular, useful for a vehicular reason, we need to consider that the infrastructure that they give them has to be usable. Now you can see here's another bollard where a car has hit it. Here's a very nice truck. They stopped before the crosswalk, which is, it's not rare, but it's not common. So now we're coming up to another intersection, which is it's not a hawk crossing, but it's a lighted pedestrian cyclist crosswalk. What I don't like about this is I'm going here, as you can see, I'm going 16 miles an hour, which is on the slower end. And now I'm having to jam on my brakes and simultaneously look completely around to see if the cars are coming. So this crosswalk was really not meant for cyclists. I don't understand why they did it this way, but if we're trying to build a safe place where pedestrians and cyclists can easily and conveniently cross the street, they should not have to be the ones who have to come to a complete stop. There should be some sort of traffic mitigation or calming for the cars themselves. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be calming measures for bicycles. It's just that there are no similar traffic calming tools used for cars. They could have raised the crosswalk by a half inch, and that would have been wonders for safety. So as you can see, it's an especially busy day on Massard. We've seen probably 10 or 12 cars already, so this is one reason I'm really opposed to widening this roadway in the future, because it doesn't have a lot of traffic, by the way. Most recent count showed it has about 7,200 cars a day, which really isn't enough for a 4-lane highway, which is what they've turned it into here. And then when we get up to the 2-lane stretch, that's the actual part that they want to widen. So here's a lighted intersection. Drivers don't really know how these work when somebody is on a bicycle on the sidewalk, and it's one reason why going against traffic on a bicycle on the sidewalk is so dangerous. So even though I have that red hand, I still have the right of way because there is a green light. And here we have some more debris in the roadway. Now if you're coming down this hill on a bicycle, I wouldn't do it in a road bike. You are going to slip. So I'm actually using special mountain bike tires on this trip, so it's a little safer for me. But if you are going down the hill, you're probably jamming on your brakes, and cycling is really momentum based. It is a lot harder to start a bicycle from a dead stop than it is a car. Especially when you're going uphill. Now this sidewalk does get like this every time it rains. This time it's been like this since, the rainy season, which had just ended probably about a month prior to filming this. So the reason why Massard might seem busier to you as a driver is because cars tend to bundle up. They don't travel uniformly throughout the roadway like we're sort of seeing here. Most traffic is actually in these big groupings of cars, so it feels like traffic's really horrible, but if you wait just like 15 seconds before you, it's an empty roadway. Which is kind of what we're seeing. You're seeing the cars bundled up. So now we have some more debris in the roadway. Again, this is only possible really because I'm swerving around it and I have good enough vision that I can. If you were a blind person, you would have wiped out by now. And then here's another egregious thing that we sort of see all over is construction really damaging the sidewalk. So you absolutely need a mountain bike to get through here. You cannot get through on a road bike. Anyway, I think the groupings of cars, they're called platoons. So as you can see here, we have another clear break in traffic, and then here's another platoon. So that car in the middle probably thinks, oh man, the traffic's so awful, but it's really not. So we don't need to make this into 4 lanes. And what I also didn't mention about this road is, for whatever reason, every time on that curve back there, I don't think I've seen a single time where a car hasn't passed onto that yellow center line. It feels like every time I travel here, somebody's going over that line. And I understand it's built to the standards, whatever those are, but for whatever reason, the design of it has induced people to go over that line. So this is a nice hill for going downhill. As a cyclist, we love hills. Going down them, at least. Now, if we want to talk about cars and bicycles being sort of interchangeable, if you want to replace maybe 1 car trip per month with a bicycle, we need to talk about the priorities of our city and where we are spending transportation dollars. So in this case, in order to keep this roadway moving as swiftly and as fastly as possible, even though it's only a 40 mile per hour legal limit, they want to make it so you can drive 80 for some reason. So in order to build a crossing here, the cyclists have to turn completely around, complete 180, and then go under the roadway with a probably very expensive bridge, and then back around. you think that you're helping the bicycles, but really what you're doing is, first of all, you're slowing down the bicycles, and then you're showing that actually cars are the priority. You know what's really important is speed of cars, not safety. That intersection could have been done a lot better without a bridge. But yes, it would have had to slow down the cars a little bit. And if speed is your number one priority, then... Alright, now we're coming down to the last little bit, almost to the end of Massard Road. So this is another piece of the bike highway here. We just got back onto it off of the sidewalk. And the reason why is because the bike way actually does not travel on this side of the road the whole way. When we got on the sidewalk, we were avoiding that whole side of the road that does not have any actual walkability or cyclability. And then we have this four-way stop here at the end. This is probably eventually going to be turned into a light, which I am dreading. It seems to work just fine as a stop sign, but people really hate this intersection for some reason. Okay, that's it. That is Massard. We're turning on to Chad Colley. So this is our best example of bike infrastructure in Fort Smith. Despite all of the negative things that I've said about it, I really do like this road. I think it's very cyclable. But if I have this much to say about our best cycling infrastructure, then you can imagine what is going on with our worst cycling infrastructure. So thanks for watching. We didn't get to talk about everything that I would have liked to talk about. We didn't talk about drainage. We didn't talk about noise complaints at Cisterna Villa. We didn't talk about mixed-use developments. But I just wanted to leave you with the concept of roadway priorities, and that is that we are spending a tremendous amount of money on these things, all of which make cycling harder, when if we want to encourage people to be able to get around without using a car, and I'm talking about epileptic people, I'm talking about young people, I'm talking about old people, I'm talking about blind people, if we want them to be able to function in our city, it is not an additional cost to us. It's simply either saving money or reorganizing money that we're already spending on roadways. Anyway, have a great day. Thank you.